Well, look, it's just briefly to reiterate what you said, Leanne, about the need for a workshop around urban design of buildings. That we make a note and do that. We support that as councillors. No one is happy with a lot of what's going up, and I doubt if a lot of staff are too. So it's just to look at how we fine-tune that part of it.
But it's also to understand the principles around guidelines and guidance and standards. Because, and it picks up the green argument that we've just had then, because, we have this amazing opportunity for sustainability to be one of the hallmarks of the new Christchurch, and it's just, I just don't want to see this opportunity wasted.
Through you, Madam Chair, can I just say that we're proposing to bring to you an hour to an hour and a half briefing on urban design, exactly discussing what you're talking about. Good. On the morning of the 17th, which is that new day that was put into the process yesterday through Claire.
They didn't tell me that.
Oh,
no, it's all right, it's okay.
Sorry.
No.
So I understand that Claire has now found that space in your diaries. We have a whole extra day, and that's on the 17th of April, and we'll begin that day with a briefing, preferably just a briefing, not a public workshop, on urban design and all of those questions that you've been talking about. Great. Paul?
Not actually a question, it's actually a statement, and all I want to say is that what is heritage in 100 years' time? It is what we build today, so that's why we've got to make sure in our rules and regulations we build something we can be proud of in the future, and I think that encapsulates everything Pauline said, the Mayor said, so we've got to make sure that what we leave behind is something that will have some value in the future.
Yes.
And lasts. Yeah, Yanni.
I do think we should be putting in some minimum environmental standards for development. Guidelines are not going to do it. The reality is that it's just not going to happen unless we prescribe it. And I just agree. It's such a lost opportunity. Modern, sustainable, environmentally friendly city. We have one chance to be unique, and we're losing it. And just because government rejected it before doesn't mean that we should. Not ask for it. They've done a lot of things that we don't like or we're not happy with, that people don't appreciate, like, shutting schools. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't stand up for what we believe is right for our city. And, their intervention is, we should be working in partner's That's really important.
And I think that's
it doesn't mean that they tell us what we can do.
But they may not have. There's stuff that I know now that I didn't know. When the Central City Plan went to government, and they came out with the blueprint. My own understanding of how these things have been developed in other cities like Melbourne. Really just come off my last visit from there. There is much that we can do that actually isn't directive, but actually facilitates what will happen as a matter of fact, because there will be nobody in the world ultimately that will invest in unsustainable practices.
That's the problem.
I know it's how we get there. It's
again,
how we get there.
People have the funding through their insurance, which means they're going for maximising the insurance for, in some cases, the lowest cost, lowest quality, unsustainable, un-urban design-like buildings. So it's a huge problem here because the funding isn't actually dictating, the good outcomes that it might be doing in other places.
Yeah.
Just 2 comments, Madam Chair. I urge you all to read the comments from CJOB, which were given to you this morning, to understand where the officials are coming from. And secondly, if you do wish us to put in any standards in this plan supporting sustainability, we need to know that today so that we can work on it before it goes to the ministers.
I think you're getting a very strong view that there ought to be statements in the plan around, minimum requirements, but
statements, but not
well, I don't know.
As
you see, until we have this workshop around how guidelines can, sometimes not having a direction will achieve the same end as what you want to achieve. Or do we say that this is a line in the sand and actually we want that written into our city plan? It should have been written into the CBD, wasn't. Maybe this is an opportunity to have that conversation with central government as we go forward. You know, I mean, this is going to go to an independent hearings panel. It's not going to be decided by the government. And what is notified to the government, notified by the council, will be the council's plan. How it ends up determined by the hearings panel is an independent process.
Well, we can come to you with some options as part of that workshop.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. Now, how much longer do we need for the commercial chapter, do you think? Because I know that the individual rules won't, I think, necessarily hold us up. We've dealt with the general principles and... Do you want to carry on until you're done and then we'll break for lunch?
Mark's just told me up to an hour, so...
allowing for...
How disciplined are councillors going to be? Well, let's see if we can get it done in half an hour. We'll give you till 1 o'clock and then we'll break for lunch.
Yep.
All right?
Okay, policy 9, it's recognising all of the suburban centres that were council is preparing master plans for or has adopted master plans for. So it's recognising that, and that's reflected in the rules that give effect to some of the actions in the master plans.
In the Sydenham Master Plan, sites with a frontage to Colombo Street, there'll be no vehicle access onto Colombo Street. Is that part of the Sydenham Master Plan?
I understand it is, yes.
And the rationale, given how many shops and things have vehicle access onto Colombo Street?
Is to avoid a situation which is similar to Littleton of having an active frontage which has got continuous building front to it. If you have breaks in that building front for every property with individual accesses, you lose that continuity of a clear building line, which is what makes it special.
Yeah, I completely understand that, but if it was developed as an overall concept and there was vehicle access that perhaps came around the back, would that destroy that? Like if these weren't developed separately but were developed as an overall properly with good designs allowing vehicle access, does that...
There is a street behind the area that you're talking about. Yeah. It's not Colombo Street, it's the street behind that runs vertical, you know, that way.
Parallel?
No, no, not parallel.
Oh, not
the
parallel.
opposite of parallel. Buchan Street. Yeah.
At 90 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about it.
Yeah.
No,
Barrington.
when does this come out?
Not Barrington. Brougham Street is Highway
Yeah.
74.
Is that more about achieving design than a traffic outcome?
Through that assessment of design, we can consider departures and changes to how it's dealt with through that design assessment.
Yeah.
And they're not publicly notified?
That's right.
Okay.
David and then Yanni.
Thank you. Look, I'm just concerned about the policy and how it deals with the scope of master plans and the fact that there's not a lot of statutory recognition. And thirdly, the linkage between the key activity centres, that some of them are, and the provisions in the LERP to recognise that status. I sort of bring this up, I suppose, looking at the New Brighton master plan, that it focused just on the business area and ignored even the pier and the library over the other side, a couple of key assets, and how these master plans actually are scoped, or what provision the policy allows for scope of master plan, and the fact that in the end they don't have much statutory recognition anyway.
The district plan is obviously one of a number of tools to give effect to the master plans, and is the statutory tool to give effect to parts of the master plan, but the master plans themselves were never, I understand, intended to be statutory. So the district plan provides rules which, using the example given before of Sydenham, where there's special provisions applying in light of direction from the master plan, we could potentially do the same in New Brighton, but it's one of a number of mechanisms that to achieve the master plan vision, but it's not the only one, and a lot of the other mechanisms are non-statutory measures which
Very few
require...
of them are non-statutory.
What's that?
Very few of them are non-statutory.
Well, they do differ widely amongst the 8 master plans that there are, suburban centre master plans. The scope of the suburban centre master plans was set 2011, I think, 2011, and which centres they would apply to, all of that was determined some time ago, and under the Local Government Act. The aspirational plans, and they're plans that talk about being undertaken not only by the council but with landowners in the area, business owners, that kind of thing. So they weren't meant to be just directly put straight into district plans. Those elements or those actions that were indicated in the master plans were to go through district plans, but the sense was never that the whole of the master plan would drop into a district plan. In fact, it can't.
Very few of them ever do, so I just actually bluntly sort of query the effectiveness of having the master plans anyway, because I've seen 4 master plans for New Brighton, and not very few of any of the aspects of that master plan has ever been enacted. So I think we spend an inordinate amount of time on these master plans. They have no statutory recognition, and the scope of them is so limited at times that I really wonder about how effective they are at all.
Which is why I have played no role in the one affecting the area that I represented when I was a Member of Parliament. Yeah.
So we had this debate last term of council, and unfortunately it was lost. But it was always my intention that the master plans would have statutory effect, because they're exactly the conversation we should be having with local communities.
No, they're not.
In terms of, no, I think they are.
Sorry, they're not joined up. They're not joined up with the residential. They're just Main Street plans. They're just silly.
Anyway, but like, I think it'd be really interesting to get a list of which master plans and what statutory changes are being put into the district plan, so that you can really clearly see. I also think it'd be useful to have a timetable of the work that's being done around the district plan changes and proposals as part of those master plans, so that there's some visibility. So whether it's, you know, coming up with urban design guidelines, or, you know, what work is being indicated that will happen.
Is there any work being done on any of the master plans in that regard, specific rule changes in the district plan?
There's rules in this commercial chapter that give effect to master plans.
Okay, so can you just refer us to those quickly?
Yeah, sure.
And can I just ask, so you've got those master plans identified, but we've got also specific development plans, like there's one in here, area bounded by Antigua Street, Morehouse Ave, Selwyn Street, and railway line development plan. Where does that come from?
It's an outline development plan that exists in the current city plan. So there's outline development plans for defined areas that are different from master plan areas. So an outline development plan is a broader concept which applies to greenfield areas, but also in some cases blocks of land that have developed in the past or could be redeveloped, and guide where future road access points are and where landscaping is provided within those areas, for instance. So
like, I do wonder whether the master plan should be turned into outline development plans at some stage, so that they do have some statutory effect.
Can you just take us to the list of
Give us an example.
I'll provide an example for Sydenham. Bear with me a moment.
There isn't a single list of all of the...
No, but one could be arranged.
Yeah, I think let's do that rather than just go through them one by one. Is that all right?
We can just give you an example, though, if you like, as to what to look for.
Okay, all right.
Community making submissions on it, they'll want to turn to the Ferry Road master plan and go, right, here's the proposed district plan rule changes and objectives, and here's where I comment. The final point I just want to make is I think there's a real need for, again, the issue around monitoring of consent conditions, of outline development plans.
Well, I think that the communities in these areas have been sort of really misled as to what these were ever intended to do. But anyway, can we use the Ferry Road Master Plan as an example?
No, we're going to use Sydenham as an example because, as you know, the Ferry Road Master Plan is still going through.
Oh, okay. All right, use the Sydenham one.
So,
Hang on.
That's right.
Janine Sowerby came up with a really good document for Littleton, which shows all of the district plan review changes and proposals and how they reflect the outcomes in the Littleton master plan, the projects in the Littleton master plan. If that was able to be done for each master plan,
Yeah,
that would be great.
that would be great.
It already has been done.
Has it?
It will.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
just give
problem
us a
is
copy
that
of
some
that.
of them aren't yet completed. So, for example,
No, just give us a copy of the ones that have been done.
Right.
So we've got a list of those, but give us an example out of the Sydenham one.
so Appendix 15.9.6 has a map.
At what page?
130, 130. It introduces into the plan.
Oh, God. I can see that really well.
Yeah, it's not particularly clear at that scale. It's the Sydenham area with Colombo Street running down the middle from the top of the page down to the bottom, and there's several things shown on that plan that were identified in the master plan, including the former Sydenham school site, which is the bottom right-hand side of Colombo Street and adjoining Brougham Street, and that site's been vacant for some time now and is identified as a site providing for potentially mixed use. And if I turn to the rules, page 46 of the rules prescribes that a restricted discretionary activity status is any development within that site, subject to a development plan being submitted for the whole of that site so that we can look at how it's developed going forward. And so that site was earmarked as a brownfield site for mixed use in the master plan, and we've sought to bring that through in the rules for the chapter. Turning to page 47, which is...
What would happen now? So say one of these comprehensive plans was put in place before this rule change takes effect?
At the current time, that site, the Sydenham school site, is zoned light industrial.
Right.
And the current rules would essentially enable it to be developed for industry, and those rules don't necessarily promote the use of the site for residential.
But could you put residential on there at the moment under the existing rules?
The policies wouldn't support residential in an industrial zone, so it's constrained in that respect. But having said that, it's because it's a vacant site that's been it's a typical brownfield site that's there'd be potentially a view taken by a consents team if resource consent was applied for a mixed use development that is suitable for development for residential and commercial.
Hypothetically, you could do something.
Okay, so because that was one of the issues that came through from the joint officials too, was the need to promote brownfield sites for mixed use. So have you only done that for the master plan areas, or have you done that more broadly?
It's come through more strongly in the industrial chapter. The industrial areas are where there's greatest opportunity for brownfield redevelopment. In the commercial areas, we enable residential developments and commercial developments anyway, so we don't tend to have a policy on brownfield sites as such.
What does former school sites, though this is a former school site and it's light industrial?
Oh, sorry, it's most school sites are zone cultural, sorry.
Right.
Yeah,
no, I know, but it was a school site, but it had an underlying designation.
That's right, yes.
Can I ask you a question to clarify this? My understanding in terms of this being mixed use was that previously, prior to the master plan, elected members had seen a model of how it or could be, and it included mixed use. For example, commercial and residential all in the one block. Now, and that sort of model was incorporated into the master plan. Am I right? That site could be, in effect, mixed use.
That came from the master plan, but
it's not the pre-existing rule change.
I see.
The rules don't apply. That's the thing with the master plans. What we're being told is that this is an example of where a master plan decision has been given effect to in the plan change.
Now.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's good.